Hello and welcome. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the revelations I've made with regard to Dark Souls lore. I'm not going to put the Dark Souls video up. We don't need that. We've all played Dark Souls. We know what it looks like. But there are some symbols that I feel like should be examined because the relationship between Seath and his daughter Priscilla being severed through the painted world of Ariamis, meaning Seath can continue his research into sorceries, which fundamentally alter the living creatures of the land and turn them into these crystal husks of what they once were, eventually even trapping someone like Dusk in one of them. We don't need to talk about Dusk or Ulusul right now, but that, I mean, think about how the forest, the Darker Garden, is technically sort of Seath's land, so the Moonlight Butterfly is connected to it all, because the Moonlight Butterfly could be an expression of what Seath's been doing with his experimentation from the hard golems to the Moonlight Butterfly. But again, we're not here for that. We're here to examine the relationship between Seath and Priscilla. Well, sort of. Priscilla holds the Life Hunt Scythe, and Seath is mortal. We know that because he is a scaleless dragon. There's like one, and low-key kind of blew it for representation of scaleless dragons by betraying your own. You know, I mean, I didn't know much about dragons before I played Dark Souls, but after learning a little bit about the lore, the ancient dragon seems much more like sort of supportive of the chosen undead than Seath. And I mean, later on we'll go and fight Seath. But what I wanted to get to is actually the relationship between Seath and his daughter highlights something else we should examine, and that's the relationship between the Bed of Chaos and their daughter. I'm going to use her because it was the Witch of Izalith, and I'm sure the monstrosity, like, I don't know where you would reproduce with it, but I'm going to assume it is a female monstrosity, much like I assume Seath is a male monstrosity. And when you examine how you have the Bed of Chaos then corrupting her daughters, the Quelaag and Quelana both have similar prefixes of their name, and then you also have the one that goes and hangs out in front that you can buy pyromancies from and stuff. There's that third one. So then you also have the one that's in front of the Bed of Chaos. There's a lot of children of the Witch of Izalith, but you only have to kill the one that stands in your path as the chosen undead, Quelaag. So you kill the child of the Bed of Chaos. Sorry, the Witch of Izalith. It's again, relationships have been severed due to the corruption of the First Flame, or the dwindling of the First Flame in this new age. But we're going to get to that because there's another interesting relationship we can examine, and that exists between Nito and Pinwheel. Now, we can't necessarily say that they're related, but we can look at the way in which the two interact with one another, and Pinwheel stole from Nito. That is kind of in the lore, and we know that. Pinwheel also has three masks: the mask of the mother, the mask of the father, and the mask of the child. Now, who could those three people be? We have a mother, the Witch of Izalith, we have a father, Seath the Scaleless, and we have a child, Priscilla, who got all scared, held the peculiar dog, and was curled into the painted world of Ariamis. And when you look at that, and then you superimpose the Lord of Sunlight, Gwyn, and he's got his children, Gwyndolin, the man who was raised as a woman and studies pyromancies, and therefore, not pyromancies, but moonlight magic, does the kind of like on the fruity side, but not trans, you know? He's an interesting character. One of these days I'm gonna go kill him, because after you kill him and get the Ring of the Firstborn Son turns away from his family. Again, so you have the firstborn son, and you have the son who was raised as a woman and studied the moonlight sorceries. So you have the moonlight sorceries and the sunlight, and then you have Solaire over here, who's got the sun on his armor. He's got the sunlight blade, pew, and he practices faith. Now, a Lord of Sunlight and his firstborn son, who no longer bears the family name, much like when Rhea went down into the catacombs and we speak with Petrus, and Petrus, upon hearing her return, goes, "Oh, Rhea is nothing without her family name." So the undead who are cast out from their families, who go on journeys or pilgrimages, Rhea being one who was taken to Pinwheel / the catacombs or Tomb of the Giants to be made into a firekeeper. Again, I don't think I mentioned this, but Anastasia carries the dingy robes, and the dingy robes are merely priestess robes that have been covered in soot. So we know that when Rhea goes down into the Tomb of Giants and she passes away, her soul will attract a large number of other souls, and the humanity will begin gnawing at it and create that firekeeper soul. And that's why when you go up into the citadel, the undead parish, you see Rhea hanging out exactly where you would pick up a firekeeper soul, because the flow of time is distorted in this land. And Solaire, much like Rhea, has also lost his family name. Is he worth nothing without it? Well, Solaire is not the chosen undead. Solaire is merely aware of the chosen undead, and instead of trying to lead the chosen undead, as the game story does, you see you're constantly forced on this path to Gwyn. You can't go through the game and not kill Quelaag, or go through the game and not kill Pinwheel. In order to progress through the game, you have to kill these bosses, and in order to kill these bosses, first you have to understand who these bosses are, because they're not just a compilation of movesets. These are entities summoned from the bed of chaos, summoned from Seath the Scaleless, summoned from Gwyn, summoned from all these different places, and you can see how the Age of Lords, after they came from the dark, and then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. You see how silly it sounds? But at the end of the game, instead of linking the flame, we can bring about the Age of Dark. And where did they come from? Lords rise in the Age of Dark, bring about the Age of Sunlight, Lord of Sunlight, Gwyn. Big ball of fire up in the sky. Is the sun always going to be burning? You'd think so. That's probably why he affiliated himself with it. But then Lord of Sunlight has 2 children, male, Guinevere being often, I think she goes with like Flynn in some other lore. I don't know. Guinevere, we all understand, is merely an illusion presented as sort of the visual Guinevere's position is illusory to highlight the fact that there is a lawless land within Lordran. Meanwhile, if you go to a place like the Painted World and speak with Priscilla, Priscilla understands that the people of this land are inherently peaceful, so they need no laws to govern them. And Guinevere, being an illusory figurehead presented and defended by the Dark Moon Covenant, illustrates how Gwyndolin serves Gwyn's mission, whereas Solaire, engaging in jolly cooperation with the chosen undead, means that that son is the son that turned away from his father in Gwyn, and therefore is supporting the chosen undead to lead the chosen undead to defeat his father, who's locked up in the kiln of the first flame, probably by the primordial serpents, or one of the primordial serpents. Who knows who's in charge down there? The 4 kings? Whew. I don't even know anything about them. But when I think about the crow, you know what I think about? I think about how birds are low-key kind of stupid, because if you wanted to get from A to B, you could just walk there. But birds decide to go up and fly, which means if you imagine from the center of the earth, a line upward to the surface of the earth, a bird would rise past and travel a further distance to go along that edge, and that makes no sense. Who's gonna want to fly? But meanwhile, every day people are getting in airplanes, and every day people are crashing in airplanes because Trump and Elon Musk are coming in saying, "You're fired, you're fired. Hey, by the way, we need to hire some of these people who retired. By the way, we want AI to come in and do it all." And it's a wild world we live in, but we can see where the issue spawns from if we look higher level than what the sort of system is presenting to us. If you go through the game of Dark Souls and you look at the Gaping Dragon and you think, wow, I wonder what that would feel like. I mean, yeah, you're engaging with the art, but you're not engaging with it in a way that'll inform, hey, how does the gaping dragon become made out of something like the bed of chaos and an ancient dragon? We see the remnants of an undead dragon in the crossway between New Anor Londo and the Blight Town, which in that crossway, if you go down into the Valley of the Drakes, you see the undead dragon just hanging there. What if that bottom half got cast off and then washed ashore into the depths, and then was infested with one of those dragon halves, and then bada boom, turns into a big old teeth monster? But if you just think, oh wow, it's gonna hurt, that's how it's gonna feel, you know? Like, what, you don't need to think. Okay, anyway. There are a lot of things in the game of Dark Souls that we can look at and explore, and a lot of parallels we can draw to the real world. I think the biggest thing we should take away is that no matter how old a piece of art becomes, the things that make it timeless are the care and effort put into creating an experience that is worth having. We could say all day that this image is art and that image is not art, but arguing over what is art fails to understand the value art brings to our lives. When I go to work and deal with, you know, some issues there, believe it or not, children aren't too kind to people that look like me. And when I go to school and I'm dealing with a group of people who have no idea sort of what it's like to be away from their family, and they're experiencing it for the first time, and I'm seeing remnants of things I used to struggle with, having roommates, like when I was in the military and I had roommates, and well, one guy called me an alcoholic. And again, I am not someone who likes being discredited. I will fight tooth and nail to affirm that what I say is valid and true, and if I'm wrong, I have no issue correcting myself. Sometimes I speak with a degree of ignorance reflective of the social constructs that I was raised within, but I'm constantly working to better myself, and I think we are all capable of bettering ourselves, but so often we choose to just be complacent. And now especially is not a time for complacency, because we are in the midst of our own transition from the Age of Fire to the New Age of Fire. Our hallowed figure of this era is going to be Donald Trump, unfortunately. He's positioned himself in such an ideological way that there's going to be no way to write the history books without mention of how much chaos he has sown. And is that a good thing? No. But I'm going to continue blaspheming against, you know, the Christian God. And the reason I blaspheme is not because I don't believe the Christian God is capable of forgiving me for blaspheming. It's because if God is a being that knows everything and created the universe, when God hears me blaspheme against his name, he understands that the God I am blaspheming against is not God himself. If there were an all-powerful being, they'd be capable of understanding the limitations of human experience and recognizing why my frustration with a higher power who created the universe and has knowledge of everything that's going to happen and will happen and ever happened. You know, I'd be a little frustrated if I were just cast out and like, hey, go ahead and fall through this entire system, and by the way, I was just testing you the whole time. You kidding me? I'll punch you in the face. But if you are truly an all-powerful being, I have no problem acknowledging your all-power. I will say you made some goofs. You certainly made some goofs. And I have no problem spending eternity telling that God what goofs they made. But by the point I reach that era, it won't matter anymore what I did here than what I will do there, because all we ever have is this moment. And so when I say after I pass away I'm going to strike God, the reason I say that is because as I live in defiance of God's will. And I will bow to no God, no country, and no false idols that don't sort of teach me to be a better person. Because that's all I want to do. And it's a shame that we're so often caught up with leaders that are more concerned with earning money. But that's the system of capitalism. And unfortunately, if you ever examine capitalism under any critical lens, you'll realize how short-lived capitalism has been, and people will go, oh, well, communism never works in practice. It just sets the stage for tyranny. Yeah, tyranny like capitalism, where they slowly convince you that as the proletariat, you have no power, and then you walk through things like doors, and you don't recognize who made the door, but there was always a carpenter. There was someone who built the house we're in. There was someone who built the camera I'm talking to. The microphone went through years of technology and research to then become wirelessly transmittable as an electrical signal. But again, if we sit and we take everything for granted and we don't recognize the amount of work that goes into creation, production, and the world around us, we will live in a world painted in such strokes that we will never be able to engage with it meaningfully. And that is what I don't want to lose with regard to our movements forward. I want us to be able to engage with art, not go, hey, that art is bad. It takes no talent to say, hey, that game was a bad game. Especially when those arguments are based around political reasons, because in 20 to 30 years, those political reasons will very well change. And then you look back at games like that, and they become pivotal sort of moves forward because they innovate and they don't fear being different and standing out. If you're constantly bowing to your sort of fan base, though, which is the corporate world we've now grown into in this late stage capitalist hell, then it's no different than if, say, Leonardo da Vinci were out painting his Vitruvian Man and someone was like, hey, you ought to give him bigger tits. Give him bigger tits. Make his dick a little longer. You know, like, I mean, we all want David to have a little bit bigger of a thing, but that's okay because he took down Goliath. And it's not necessarily the size of the ocean, it's the motion of the waves that change sort of how we experience our... I'm sorry, I think I'm talking about orgasms. I didn't mean to do that. Anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Dark Souls. Thank you so much for joining me. It's so fun getting to share these things with you, and I'm looking forward to making some more videos with you, for you, sorry. And with you is actually, hopefully we have an interview coming up on Monday, and then I'm going to do some editing, and I should have it out either Monday night or Tuesday. We'll see though, you know, it's going to be super fun. So thank you for watching. Have a great day. Love you. Bye.